So, someone asked me about remote whiteboarding today and what a good tool for doing that is. And I guess I've been trying to work this out for quite a while, and I actually think that Figma, which is a design tool, is quite a good solution. Um, Whiteboarding is kind of important. I actually think there's nothing better than getting a bunch of people in a room together with a pile of post-it notes, no devices, no laptops, and a load of whiteboard pens and whiteboard walls. But in a remote setting, that's impossible to do. And so I've been kind of looking for quite a long time for a solution to that and how you can do it remotely. And I've tried like Trello for card sorting and replacing post-it notes with Trello cards. We've tried Miro as well, which is kind of designed to solve this problem. But recently I've been messing around with Figma. And Figma's a design tool, if you're not aware of what it is, which is web-based, which makes it pretty good. And it's got some advantages for doing this kind of thing. So firstly, it's totally freeform. You can dump images and drawings and components from your design system if you use Figma for that, straight into the whiteboards or the artboards that you're using to do whiteboarding. And that's kind of useful. It also embeds really well in other tools. So it embeds in Notion really easily. You kind of don't have to do anything extra. And I guess one big advantage, if you use Figma for design at your company, it's not another tool. So there's no need to manage an additional set of users or pay extra money for another tool. For designers, at least, it's going to be something that they're already familiar with. I think there's maybe also an advantage if you use Figma for design. If you also use it to facilitate meetings and replace whiteboarding in remote meetings, it'll help get product managers, devs, whoever else familiar with using Figma, which might help get them more involved in the design process and stuff. Now, I've not tried it with more than a couple of participants, so I don't know how well Figma handles like multiplayer with like 20 people all trying to collaborate on a whiteboard. And I guess unlike Trello or Notion or something like that, it's hard to get data out of Figma because they're just designs, they're static things. But that's just like a whiteboard or post-it notes. You've got to take a picture of them, or you've got to write them all down in a Google Doc after the meeting or whatever. So I think Figma is a pretty good choice for doing this kind of stuff. First tip, I suppose, if you're going to do this, is to turn on multiplayer cursors. So if you go into Figma, I can't remember what the keyboard shortcut is, but if you go down here and go to keyboard shortcuts, there's one somewhere for show. Yeah, there we are. Command Option and backslash will turn on multiplayer cursors, and what that means is that you'll be able to see different people's cursors and what they're working on and what cards they're moving around, which just helps if you're all on a Zoom call and you're working on this at the same time on a different screen. It just helps people understand who's moving what at what time, and who's typing and stuff. So that's the first tip: turn on multiplayer cursors. I'd also say it's a good idea to set up a component library. If you've got designers using Figma, they'll know how to do this probably. But if you've got an external library which contains things like post-its or arrows or boxes or whatever you regularly draw on your whiteboards to put post-its in, you can set them up as a library. So I've got a bunch of post-its here. There's a post-it component, and I've just set it up so the text resizes properly inside these. If we make them bigger and smaller, it centers. And there's probably a bunch of other fancy stuff that you could do in here if you wanted to. But yeah, definitely having these as a component is helpful to like someone who isn't a designer and uses Figma, because they can just drag this in from here and get a new post-it and start editing it. So yeah, that's the kind of basics. And you can see I've kind of drawn up here, some other stuff where I might want to move some of these over into here or something. I don't know. I'd also say it's well worth using the functions for tidying stuff up in here. So if I select all of these and head over on the right and go to tidy up, it'll put them in a nice grid for me. And one of the advantages to this is that we can kind of space them out evenly or whatever, but we can also swap things around by using Figma's ability to swap items about in here, which is kind of useful. So like if I want to move this one to the front, I can just swap them. So that's definitely a powerful thing if you're kind of organizing post-it notes and information. I'd also say use the link feature. So if you go onto a piece of text and you hit Command K, you'll be able to type a link. And that will show up, and people can visit this link from inside the Figma doc. So that's super useful if you've maybe organized a load of things in here somehow, and I don't know, and you want to link to a strategy doc as it is here, or you want to link to some other thing that's external, you can do that right in Figma. And then also there's the ability to comment in Figma, so we can use this comment thing here, and drop comments and discuss things, and you know, it's not quite like using Trello, but again, you can tag people in here and all that kind of stuff, so make use of that as well. So yeah, I guess like if you haven't considered using Figma for a whiteboarding tool, it's maybe an unusual but interesting choice. I have discovered an alternative in the last couple of days, thanks to a friend of mine called David Kohler, which is this tool called Parabol, which is specifically designed for retros. And I guess this is a really good choice if all you're trying to do is generate cards of stuff, then group them together and then vote on them, because that's what it's built to do. But for a bit more freeform stuff, Figma's a pretty good choice.